There's a meet and greet on a Tuesday morning, 10:30. So I plan to make it. I want to be there. I want to cultivate business. But it did come down to, holy cow, I've got to be on the job site this morning. And that fell to the wayside. If you think about that one moment happening over and over and over again, how many opportunities, how many sales leads have you missed out on? How many relationships have you missed out on? If you just do that over and over, if you have a track record of making it to those events, it will pay off.
Yes, having that moment where you realize that prevented me from doing something I needed to do to grow my business. Let's not just let that be a continuum of forever.
Yes.
Let's address it.
Right.
And just 1% better every day.
That was a moment where the job dictated my calendar rather than my calendar staying my calendar.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cost of Doing Business show. Today we are in Pittsburgh at Kevin from Transfiguration Landscapes location. I've got Kyle and Gene, some of our customer support and sales folks with us to spend a day together out of the office. And thanks for having us over, Kevin.
Absolutely, it's
Appreciate
fantastic.
your hospitality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm really loving your location. Basically, we're sitting in your office here. If you're watching this on video, taking a house and turning it into an office. It's kind of cool. You got all the amenities, the kitchen, everything.
It is.
There.
It's cozy.
Yeah. So give us an intro of yourself and your business, what your team size looks like, that kind of thing.
So I've been in the industry for 15 years, similar to your story, kind of started at a company and worked up through, but then I jumped around to a few different companies. I worked for successful companies. I worked for companies that went under,
Really?
learned some good stuff, some bad stuff along the way. I was a landscape foreman at first, then transitioned into a hardscape foreman. Spent 2 years doing sales design and foreman duties at a company. Then I went out on my own. So I've been Transfigurations for going on 5 years now, and that puts us here. I had been working out of my shop, out of my own garage, small team. So we've bought a new property where we're at, where our office and our shop facilities are, and that is still us as a small company. We're still a small team, quality and margin oriented instead of volume oriented. It's been a fun ride so far.
And how many people do you have now?
So we have 3 full-time guys. We have 2 summer guys that will be returning for their 3rd season. Like, it's not revolving summertime help, it's returning summertime help. Local great college kids that are going to be pursuing physical training careers and doing other paths in life, but they've come into the company and they've referred their friends, and we've had a lot of hiring through referral.
That's the best kind.
Yeah, so we've grown slow, but we've grown tight, I would say.
And I saw on your whiteboard there a goal of 1.4, 1.2. So, and so with 3-4 guys plus some summer help, like that's a solid business.
Right.
Yeah.
It's lofty. It's high production. We do plan to bring more people into the company to hit that goal, but we know where our range is.
Yeah. And before we started recording, you were kind of giving us a rundown of, like, we were out there kind of walking around the shop and saw a steel wrist bucket. So you were telling us kind of all the things, all the moves you've been making. Like,
yes.
You got the new machine, the tilt rotator.
Right.
You hired on a salesperson. Give us a bit of a rundown of, like, what's all been moving and shaking in regards to your growth and your plans and all of that.
So we've been building for 4 years now, company-wise, and trying to strategize, look at investments. At any given time, you go out, buy a truck, go buy a trailer, tell yourself you need things or things that are need wants. When this property came up for sale, it opened up a possibility of what we could do. Steps 2, 3, 4, 5, after having the space and the capacity for the next purchase or the next leveraging moment. It was a godsend that this property kind of came up. I came back from H&A last year. So very vividly remember, it came back from H&A. And the Monday morning I drove out of my old property, took a right, saw the sign for sale, put an offer in within 24 hours. We owned it within 2 days.
Really?
My father thought I was crazy, but it just felt right. and it has continued to feel right to be here. So after we got this, we moved in, we don't do any snow removal. We focus on building 10 months out of the year and then planning and preparing for the 10 months ahead of us in that next season. So we moved in, got everything shipped over. And then this season, I've had a long time conversation going with an old friend, a old boss, an old manager, a church friend. And this was finally the year where he and I came together, came into an agreement to work together again. And he's our new sales manager, design manager. That allows us to go in two different directions and start to hit that larger goal of doubling our revenue from last year.
So the 1.2 is doubling from last year. Yeah, that's impressive.
We've been on a 25 to a 30% growth year after year, which this year probably, if I would have still been selling, just doing, wearing all the hats on my own, I bet I would have only been able to squeeze out another 10, 15% of growth. But I don't feel as though I would have jumped another 30. We wouldn't have gotten to 800 or 900 without hiring someone. I was definitely the bottleneck.
What made you realize that?
Lifestyle, cold pizza, for a callback for you.
Yeah.
Too many of those moments.
Yeah.
A lot of lost business, not bad business, not unhappy customers, but just missed phone calls, quotes that can't get back out the door fast enough, a lot of lost opportunities. That as a small company, as a family-focused guy, that's okay. We're just going to lose business. But at some point, hiring a salesman and also having a really solid subcontractor in place is part of our sauce right now. A relationship that we've worked on for 2 years, a person I've known for 10 years. Adam can sell for him. That crew can execute. So even this spring, when I've not hired the second crew, we're trying to have 2 crew production volume.
Understood. And so this subcontractor is literally a hardscape crew, or?
Yes. So we are utilizing him more for spring mulch and maintenance and more just time of year projects, plantings coming up. But he is a hardscaper. He's not just an employee that we call a subcontractor. He's got his own insurance. He's got his own equipment. Him and 3 other guys show up with truck, trailer, excavator, skid loader, and execute projects for us.
Yeah.
So me or Adam are there kind of as just PMs, points of contact for our customers. And what we're working on is how that customer experience happens and how we keep the brand integrity without muddling things down, getting confusion with the customers. We hired you and then these guys showed up. We don't have any problems with that. We're always trying to refine that and improve that.
When you realized that you were the bottleneck, where did your brain go? What looked like the solution? Did you kind of inherently know that you needed to hire a salesperson?
I spent about a year thinking I need a really good operations manager who would take that side off of my plate, where I would be sales machine and then pass it off to the next head of delegation to a field crew. Need someone who was that 10-year foreman, well-paid, highly experienced, foreman level project manager guy. Those guys are super hard to come by, or they have really good benefits with another company. They're already well paid and they've got a 401k and they've got health care and they only live 20 minutes from the company they work for. That guy is pretty well settled in. Sales managers are hard to find too. But that was the 2 avenues, either office help or field help. And so the way things have just organically developed for us, it was sales manager so that we could expand sales and revenue and then kind of not worry about production afterwards, but run those 2 trains at the same time.
At the time before you had the salesperson, were you losing so much business that you actually had the leads to keep 2 salespeople busy, or?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yeah, because last year we sold out our budget and were able to tack on 70 $100,000 more with our subcontractor. I had specifically deferred to use to him until we were booked out. And then at the end of the season, I was able to kind of crank on a month worth of work for him. So we started the season with that same philosophy of if we can capture it, we know who we can send it to, who can execute it to our quality. And it's a model that we're kind of like a blended model at this point. A little bit in-house, a little bit out of house, and we'll see where that goes the next 2-3 years.
What have you found works the best to get those leads?
The cliche of quality work, good customer experience. Like that's always
Which means word of mouth.
Yes, but word of mouth I've found I think is problematic. Word of mouth from my kid's babysitter might not be the right type of work. So word of mouth, I like to give some nuance to it, like word of mouth from my dealership or from the supply yard, from a lighting contractor, word of mouth from the guy who pours concrete after the pool, your subcontractor, your contractor network, that kind of word of mouth.
Yeah. Which means, I'm assuming means networking, fostering relationships, building relationships, that kind of thing.
Right.
How would you go about doing that if you had to start over today?
I would do that heavier and upfront.
What would you do? Like, what would you go out, take them out for coffee? Like, what would you do?
Yeah, cold calls, cold knocks.
Yeah.
I think it all just starts there. You can gift people lavish. You can, do some fancy dinner. I've been to a few fancy dinners where one of the sales reps had a few too many drinks. And
that's not a good look.
Yeah, it's one of those stories I'm not going to say who, what company, does not matter. But the rep was in front of a whole room of people and the company clearly shelled out a couple grand minimum. And I was entirely turned off by the lavish display of their resources with their half in the wind sales rep. So I think phone call, simple coffee.
Yeah.
Good approach. Get some print materials in somebody's hand, something like that.
Something you can leave with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that might turn into nothing in the immediate term, but could turn into, I need a guy. And
exactly right. Yeah, don't expect the short-term payoff of just because I show up with a pamphlet at my dealership, they start sending me huge leads.
Yeah, I know a guy.
It takes time to build trust.
Exactly. I know a guy that worked really hard. He did more water features. Jack from Atlantis Water Gardens.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that business.
They do beautiful work. Yeah.
One of the best in the world. Don't tell him I said that. But he worked really hard on fostering those B2B, business to business partnerships or networking. If I remember correctly how he was telling me the story, it felt like it just went nowhere, like beating on a brick wall for so long. And then suddenly things started to click and it turned into one of them was giving him over $1 million worth of leads.
Right, from one source.
From one source.
Right.
And it got to the point where it fueled a massive kind of growth spurt in his company. So the B2B networking, it's maybe uncomfortable. It takes work because you don't do work for those people.
It definitely takes work. It's like prospecting. It's speculative.
Yeah.
Right.
And you might feel like you knock on 50 people's doors and everybody tells you, yeah, and you get nothing from it. You might feel a little jaded, but when you hit the right one, that can be...
I can give you another example of just a few weeks ago at springtime, I've paid money to be in a local network, B2B network, and there's a meet and greet on a Tuesday morning, 10:30. So I plan to make it. I want to be there. I want to cultivate business. But it did come down to, holy cow, I've got to be on the job site this morning. And that fell to the wayside. If you think about that one moment happening over and over and over again, how many opportunities, how many sales leads have you missed out on? How many relationships have you missed out on? If you just do that over and over. If you have a track record of making it to those events, it will pay off.
Yes. So I'm curious, what was the urgency that made you like, dude, I got to be on the job site?
I think it was a bolder, natural stone job. Right now, our crew is great, but sometimes we do work where it at least feels, it might be more of the owner psychology, but the homeowner wants you there, wants the oversight, just wants to make sure that, lines, joints, whatever it might be. It could have also been an emergency. I'm not fully sure of what that day was.
The reason I asked that question is, okay, cool, bam, right there's the next layer of the bottleneck.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So even though you're not going to solve that overnight, having that moment where you realize, that prevented me from doing something I needed to do to grow my business. Let's not just let that be a continuum of forever.
Yes.
Let's address it.
Right.
And just 1% better every day.
That was a moment where the job dictated my calendar rather than my calendar staying my calendar. That time was blocked. I should have been there. Once you get to that level of everything you've dictated your calendar you'll do, and you execute on all of those blocks, hiring, building out marketing, the more time you put into those little chunks, I see those gains.
I mean, robbing from that buy back your time book, like building the playbooks for, doing the teaching and the training so that you're not the bottleneck in that
Absolutely.
anymore. Yeah. Kind of in the same way that getting to a point.
That's one of them.
What's
Sitting
that?
there learning.
Oh yeah, you have it.
Yeah, from you. I'm about halfway through that.
Did I send that to you?
No,
Oh, okay.
but like from you being aware of Dan Martell, you speaking of that book, that's one I picked up, and that's definitely, maybe a lot of this hovering around mindset and certain buyback principles. The sales, talking about when to hire operations or when to hire sales, I think it was loosely tied into some sort of buyback principle, where it was like, I'm going to spend the money to make the money.
Yeah, he has
the money's in the budget to make the money.
Exactly. He has the thing of the buyback principle, which is like, if you pay yourself $100 an hour, let's just say, and it'd be possible to delegate that same task for $25 an hour.
Correct.
Well, then it is very worthwhile to take the work, because you have to stop doing it and teach someone else how to do it, turn it into a playbook for someone else, because someone else doing something that you can do for 1/4 the price, now you can take your high value time and turn it into something else. Yeah.
I would say for someone that is at a similar level to where I just very recently was working out of your own garage, being in the field more, it's that first step of just stopping doing the work. It's not necessarily hiring someone out immediately, it's just about almost your refusal to do the low value task. And that was always maybe difficult for me because I don't want to be too good for a task.
I know.
You don't want to feel high and mighty,
There's a bit of a
but
mental
at some
battle
point
there.
you know the value of your time and you have to accept that.
Yeah.
I would say I'm 1/100th of the way through that book and going on that entrepreneur's journey of knowing what not to do, where to put my time, not to sweep the shop floor, not to run a machine, not to run materials around. Once you remove yourselves from those tasks, your time opens up.
Yep. To go one layer deeper on that, to kind of push back against this mindset thing of like, oh, you're too good to do that task anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, I heard this from somebody else. This is not from me. It's like, well, no, you're giving someone else the opportunity to have a job, or you're like
grow into the next.
You're giving someone else a path to grow.
Right.
Like to the degree that you can delegate and give work to other people is the degree that you can provide growth to other people.
Correct.
So that mindset helped me a little bit with the idea of like, oh, so you're too good for that? It is I know what you
Once again, that's like just a narrow negative perspective.
It is.
And if you look at, I'm going to grow. I never wanted to grow the company for numbers. There was a time in life where I was almost nearly anti-capitalist. To grow a company for growth, to keep up with things has always been tough to swallow, but a more helpful concept for growing company is providing the opportunity for the people that are in it, for them to grow through their career, for them to grow even to outside of your company to the next company, but you've allowed them to grow into a better person, a better worker that contributes more to society. That's the fun of growing a company.
What changed your mind on how you viewed growth?
Having good guys. It's kind of been a chicken and the egg, but once we've got a few good guys in that stick around, then it's easy to go buy a machine for them to run. If you don't have anybody to run a rental machine, all these companies on Instagram, you can talk about a steel wrist, but like someone still has to run that machine.
Yeah.
It's never the machine, it's still the guy operating it. Buying machines does not solve hiring ever. It still has to be good hiring, good culture. And so we're just trying to do that very, very slowly and see if we can catch some momentum. Ruining culture, bringing in the wrong person would just not be our path.
Yeah, and like you said, hiring referrals from your current employees is a great way to vet people.
Right. 2 years ago, the SynkedUP Summit at Tussey, whoever the brothers' names are, saying like, yeah, I've worked here for 10 years or 7 years, whatever the numbers are, right? Like, okay, 2 brothers have worked here for like nearly a decade.
Oh, the employees you mean? That was probably Dan and Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, just employees that have come into the company and found the sense of I can belong, I can go out on the job site and have autonomy, have control over my job site. A lot of the things I heard the employees at Tussey discussing were things I valued when I was an employee at other companies. So that's currently what I try and provide for my guys. Is enough information to do your job well, enough resources to do your job well. I fail, we slack, we all fall behind sometimes. But if your crews have the right support and the right information, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Being prepared.
Yeah. Would you view yourself as an owner-operator with a core team of people, small team of people model, or more of grow a business that could run without you model?
Owner-operator, core team. We maybe in 10 years would be growing a company so that it's sellable or that I could fully step away. An ideal scenario for me would be just like in a design office. We've got an admin, we've got sales, we've got an operations. We're 2 crews, and I can focus on design, sales, and we've got accountants, all the boring business stuff. Somebody else can have that. I like the horticulture, the art, the design, the people, the creativity.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your journey so far, what's been the most difficult thing that you've overcome?
Always, let's be honest, like mindset of where you can go next. I quit one job just saying that if you can just make it, you start to say, if I can make X amount of dollars a year, then I'm fine. And then if you look at your numbers and you've made, I think it was 175,000 made my first year, fairly solo, some summer guys under the table. Next year was like 350 with 2 guys above the table, starting to see what 3 people can tackle, and then just growing through those mindsets of, can I at least do it? Okay, I can hit this target. What if I can go beyond this target? Then organically, I had guys that just stuck around, guys that kept returning. So in a 3rd year, I had 4 summer guys, 2 were trained and 2 were friends of those guys. So they kind of all gelled, and we hit 470 the year after 350. And then after 470, we hit 650 last year. So it's been pretty solid growth, but it has not been to chase a number. It's just kind of been like, let's see where we land at the end of the year. And not as willy-nilly as that, right? But not to set a 650 budget that if we don't hit it, we're out of business. If we don't hit 650, we didn't make any profit this year. It was kind of going through budget and let's see where we land together. So I know for other people that probably feels wild, and other business owners. I've got a good friend in this area who's got a business degree. We have very fun, healthy conversations just because his background is so different from mine. I learn a whole lot from him because his background, his approach is so different from mine.
With strategizing and that kind of
thing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In terms of the most difficult challenge you've overcome, how would you describe that challenge? You started off by saying the mindset. Was it just how you viewed yourself in your business, or?
Viewed myself and viewed just what is possible with your resources, looking outside of yourself. I started by telling myself I have a shop space that I'm not utilizing. So I bought a few racks, bought a few tools, bought a dump truck, and started using it. And then we just grew tighter and tighter, more tools, small stuff at a time, to where we had to put some more parking lot in there. And I just had to start telling myself, well, if I rip this down and I build a parking lot here, I can get 2 more guys to park here. And next summer I can have 4 employees just because I've got a place for them to park. And so even manipulating your surroundings, shouldn't say manipulating, but leveraging. Same goes with your friends, your subcontractors. There was a time when we would turn away big jobs because we, quote unquote, couldn't execute it. And then there was a point at which we knew we had the skills. We just needed 2 more guys to be there laying pavers. So calling some friends, subcontractor, insured, do it all the right way, but pay them to give you the brute force you need to execute larger jobs and always be building portfolio. I've always been very portfolio heavy for how we're building up. The Sean Collins crew and Premier Outdoor, I believe, said about very, very early on losing a little bit of profit to build the portfolio. So that's where we started as well. I took on that philosophy of it's worth doing that inlay and spending half a day of labor and losing a little bit of profit margin.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. How do you stop that from becoming the new normal?
You land one or two jobs like that, market the heck out of them, and start charging for it. You don't do that for 2 years.
Yeah.
Just get the ones that you need some good drone footage of, that you need a professional photographer to go and visit, photograph it at the right time of day.
Yes.
And then you just hammer that project to your prospective clients.
Yeah.
Then when you get the next one, now you've got 2 pretty cool projects to show your third customer, and your third customer should be paying for it at that point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then that's very reductive, but to make a point of a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. No, that's 1, 2, 3 is one thing, and as long as you make sure that you can cash flow it, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yes, and that is exactly right. I would not mean a poolscape with curves everywhere and 4 different products. Bite off what you can chew, do a small inlay on a small patio.
Yeah, sell a patio and add the inlay.
Yeah,
whatever.
Build to the next one. Don't give away half a week of work and give away all your margin just for the portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, keep it in perspective. What would you say is the best advice you've been given?
There's been lots of nuggets along the way. Let's give one is like knowing to stop doing the low value task, where if you can hire somebody for $20 to be doing it, you should find that person. You want to first make sure it's in your budget, but hire that person so you can be working on $60, $80, $100 tasks. That's a simple rule, and then it becomes a mindset once you really implement it.
It does become a mindset.
Yeah.
And many times I've had conversations where somebody was like, man, I wish I could hire an office admin, or I wish I could hire another salesperson or something to free up more of my time, buy back some of it. But the statement is, I can't afford it.
Right.
And it's like, this is why it's so important to use budgeting for planning.
Whew. You're reading we're on the same link right now. So you're phrasing right there. This is a nugget from way back before I started my company, but the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
One of the kernels in that book was a quote unquote poor mentality that we all can get stuck in, or it might be part of our family history. Kind of our culture is, I can't afford it. You could say that about time. You could say that about money. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I can't afford it. But in that book, he challenges you to say, how can you afford it? How can I afford it?
Yeah.
So if you take that negative of I can't and turn it into a question of how can I afford a secretary? How can I afford a salesperson? For you guys, the little pitch is like, how can I afford SynkedUP? Put it in your budget, start charging for it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, how can I afford the dump truck?
Yeah.
Put it into your budget. You find your answers.
That's what's so...
by eliminating the negativity and opening up the question.
That is so gold. I would not consider myself to be an office guy or a spreadsheet geek
Same
or
here.
anything.
Exactly.
But I don't know. It's addictive. Like the power of planning. Like it's like
the power of planning.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I wish I could. Okay, well, in pursuit of the question, well, how can I? So you go crunch the numbers, and that's what's so cool about budgeting is like, I can't afford an office admin. Well, I'm charging, say, $75 an hour for my work right now. What would happen if I add a $50,000 office admin in?
Yeah.
Plug it in.
Right.
Well, it goes from $75 to $78 an hour. That's I can do that.
Right.
Bam. Suddenly your brain completely switches from I can't afford it to like, that's easy. I'll just charge $80 an hour now. You know, that's a very simplistic example. Go to anything else, equipment, paying yourself more, or, whatever it is, paying your employees more. It's like it's more of like I can't. It switches to, well, what would need to be true so that I can?
How can I pay my employees more? And for me, I think sometimes my little bit of high and mighty is sometimes it's how can I afford the truck before people say how can I pay my guys better. Starting with what you give to your customers and starting with how your guys are treated. It's always the people. I loved Brian Audia at the last SynkedUP Summit, just talking about people over profit, because I am a true believer in those kind of mantras, that the profit's going to come later. You can pay your people more. They can have more benefits. They can have paid days off. That's going to pour over into their work. That's going to pour over into the experience the customer has.
Yeah, I love his slide that he shared. That one slide with Richard Branson where he said, most people say shareholder profit first, customers second, employees third. And he said it's employees first, customers second, shareholder profit last.
Right.
And actually, I mean, Richard Branson, one of the richest guys in the world.
Yeah.
Actually,
he's done a thing or two.
It's like, actually, that produces more profit for the shareholder. And it's just, it's so tricky how we get this stuff so backwards in our heads because we're optimizing for the wrong thing or whatever.
And it is easier. It's always easier to go buy a truck. I mean, it's easy to get a machine 0% or 5% financed. It's really hard to find the next rock star on your team.
Yeah.
It's hard to develop the next rock star. So I think we all were overworked. We're going in a million directions. As owners, as the salesmen, as the project managers, we're all kind of doing the easier things.
Well, and to your point, there's something I tend to see a lot, is that the default response when there's hard things, like I can't find a good help, I can't find a good employee, I don't have any money and I don't know why. The default response is, I'll just work harder.
Yeah, right. Jeez, I'm gonna buckle down. I'm gonna tighten up.
Yeah. While work is hard, like you're sweating and you're working long hours. Yes, that is hard, but it is a different hard.
Yes.
It takes a psychological discipline to go lean into the hard thing of, dude, what hasn't worked yet to find a good employee? Well, what haven't I tried yet? You know, and like ultimately, you'll get what you look for, what you work on.
Right.
You know, and so
you might have to be asking a different why.
Yeah.
You might have to have a different how.
Shift your perspective.
Yeah. Ask
shift
different
your approach.
questions
Yes.
of the same situation.
But it's just fascinating to me, and I even see it myself.
Sure. Right.
It's like, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, you're on that growth journey.
Yeah, it's like, it's just easier to just do it, or just work harder, or just like, I'll just work 2 more hours, or I'll just squeeze this in, instead of do the hard work of building the engine that produces the outcome instead of doing the outcome.
Yeah.
Because eventually, sure, you can work harder. You can maybe go from 8 hours to 10 hours, from 10 to 12, from 10 to 16 hours a day. But you get to 16 hours a day, I mean, you're done.
Right.
Your body can't.
That will go back to part of our earlier conversation. What shifted for me about the cliche of growing a company. Growing a company for profit, for volume, and for top line revenue is not attractive to me. But growing a company, when we're thinking about putting the best people in the best positions, providing them the best opportunities, being a coach, being a leader, getting the right people on the bus, and everybody's enjoying, the driver's happy, the guy at the back's happy. That's becoming my new passion for growing a company, is like seeing the people side of things. Yeah,
I feel like,
it really is.
I feel like just personally, like my horizon or my eyes are just starting to crack open on that. Like, we've been in the hustle stage for,
right.
And now it's like, okay, here I have to practice what I preach. Like break out of the hustle stage and into more of exactly what you just got done saying. I love that.
Yeah, because then you just think, like, this goes years back, but I read Ray Dalio's Principles.
Okay.
Ray Dalio is the billionaire hedge fund manager, whatever hedge fund, can't remember. But his principles are very succinct for how he ran his company at times. And he's got principles of how to run your life. So we're talking about growing a company.
Yes. Like
growing yourself and your team, right? He said this fascinating thing about at the end of his career. He wrote a book, Principles, at the end of his career, and he looked back on how he had essentially 3 management teams, 3 core phases of management team throughout the lifetime of the company while he was there managing it. And now it's on its own. He's not even a part of it. He built a company. But it's if you give yourself that long view, you or I or anybody at any stage of the company, of maybe this is just the first phase of management, Like these core relationships I have, they're beautiful people. I hope they're with me towards the end, but they might move on to their next phase of life, their next career. And then at some point, I'm going to be having a second phase of management team, a different phase of the company. And just hearing him talk about his company evolve over the decades, it's like, if you think about it in that way, like this is just the first phase. Like it's not going to stay this, it's going to evolve into the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to evolve into the next phase. And if you value the people, if you value the relationships, you're looking around thinking, I hope all these people are with me at the end of this journey.
Yeah. You want to have fun.
Yeah.
You want to enjoy what you're doing. And
One of his main principles was meaningful relationships. Like bottom line, what makes a good company? Meaningful relationships.
What gives you purpose in life?
Yeah, have purpose, have fun.
Yeah. If you go back to the day that you started Transfigurations, what is one thing you would do differently?
Hire someone immediately, train immediately, then do it a second time, repeat that. And we're just talking about landscaping companies, landscaping or building companies. You've just got to have that crew as fast as possible.
So does that mean you stayed in the solo too long?
I was a solopreneur for too long. There are people I've met that are more business oriented that could look at it more globally.
Holistically.
Holistically, and have said, if I just hire a foreman, if I hire a laborer and to sell work for X amount of dollars, then I'm the salesman. And they came up with a business model, essentially. I worked into a business model. I was a laborer, and then a foreman, and then a sales foreman, and then I almost was demoted back to being my own laborer. Then I was my own foreman, then I was my own project manager, and those were the insights I had along the way. I started selling some really cool work, and I was like, I'm just selling it to myself. Like, anytime I sell something really cool, I know who's doing it. It's going to be me. But it's no longer that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks a million, Kevin, for your hospitality and
absolutely. Come back.
Absolutely. We're not that far,
Yeah.
And open invitation to come out and see us at the Tusky Landscaping
Indeed.
area anytime. I love I see an obvious hunger and pursuit of what I would call personal growth, not just like mindset growth, which is fun. I enjoy that stuff, and that's always what
it's
I'm
contagious.
It is.
Right?
It's like once you start, it's like wow, like how different the world looks when you go from I can't to well how.
Yeah.
So I appreciate.
I'll even go back to the very beginning of my journey just to say to people along the way before I even went out on my own, I looked around at my friends and family, and it had never clicked until I started to kind of like make a list of how many people I knew that were entrepreneurs, business owners, people pursuing their own passion and dream, plain and simple. Started to think about a cousin who's an auctioneer, a friend who owns a restaurant, friends that are authors. I started to make a list of all these people that are chasing their own personal dream and living that dream no matter what it is. And so I think that's a kernel that you have to hang on to, because sometimes the bills, the repairs, whatever it might be, really distract you from what you were chasing 5 years ago, what you were chasing 10 years ago.
The other thing is as you grow, life doesn't become easier.
No.
I think when we're down here at the bottom rung of the ladder,
that's a fool's chase.
Yeah. It's like when we're down at the bottom of the ladder, looking up, looking at all our friends that are at the top of the ladder, so figuratively speaking, we're like, oh man, it must be nice. They have life so easy. They can take off whenever they want. That kind of thing. And life doesn't get any easier. In fact, it gets harder.
Yeah.
And it's just that you have to become the person that can do hard things, harder things. And when you're at the bottom of the ladder, it's because you haven't proven to the world that you can do hard things.
And you have to test your own capacity. There are times where you sign up. I've been in times of life where I'm involved with church for building and grounds, and I was the chair of building and grounds for 3 years when I first started the company. So 2 monthly meetings, repairs, clogged gutters, water in the basement at the church, fires to put out. Meanwhile, sales phone calls, whatever, entrepreneurial journeys, challenges there can be. There is a point where you have to know your own capacity. Have I signed up for too much? is being a father of 2 girls and being chair of building and grounds and running a company. Is it just all too much?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Which comes back to,
don't be a superhero.
No, which comes back to getting clear on your own values, like what you want.
Yeah, right.
Because
and I want to be involved with church. That's what's really tough. I want to be involved with church.
These are hard things.
Yeah.
But what can happen is you end up signing up for things that, frankly, you don't want to be there.
You can't give your fullest.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be involved with church, if I'm going to be involved with anything, if I'm going to be involved with my kids' PTA, you don't want to be there doing business. That's the catch. You don't want to sign up for that and then be there on a business email or a business phone call. If you're going to be at your kid's soccer game, they'll notice if you're walking around making sales call. My kid has. She said, "Are you going to watch or be doing business?" It's like, boom. That's when you hire somebody. That's when you know you're at capacity.
Yeah.
And we all have ebbs and flows. Springtime, You're going to be busy. You might not watch every soccer game.
That's where I need to get better.
Right.
Well, where can people follow you?
Transfigurations, Instagram. We have tiny TikTok, tiny Facebook, and we're working on a new website.
Well, thanks a million, Kevin.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Appreciate
I
it.
definitely appreciate it, sir.
You betcha. I appreciate your business, and I just want to say thank you for putting your faith and trust in us and your support, like coming to the Contractor Summit events, which, by the way, we're doing the next one October 3rd and 4th out in
Definitely excited for that.
Yeah, Dayton, Ohio. We're going to be highlighting Jeremy Swihart and his operation. So if you want to see a well-oiled machine business, like, you want to be there. I think this was a really good episode. We hit on some good things. So thanks for that, and just look forward to being a part of your continued growth and success for many, many years.
Oh, you guys are behind it. You guys are part of it. I used at another company, and then 1 year into owning this company, I knew I had to have something. And I think that's, let's say, pretty much when you guys hit the marketplace. So I watched you for a few months, looked at it, and we just jumped in feet first, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah. You've been on is this your 3rd year?
3rd or 4th.
I was going to say, you were pretty early.
Right. Yeah, we're grandfathered into a thing or two. In this area, like MJ Donis was on pretty early.
Yep, he was one of the first ones.
Yeah, you guys podcasted him early on.
He was the very first one ever.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really fun to hear. It's I love stuff like that in talking the Instagram world.
Yeah.
There's so many business models to follow.
Yeah.
There's so many good people out there putting out good work. Whoever's your model, you don't have to be them.
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah, yes. Let's end it on that. That's beautiful.